Alright, thank you for clicking over to part 2 here. Jay Calderon with you. And we're going to be talking about, of course, the WBC, the IBF, all those sanctioning bodies that love to get in the way of progress in the sport, recently got together to try and, of course, progress the sport. They called it a summit. They had a third meeting, I should say, in which they discussed some potential changes to the boxing world that could have some serious implications. Now, of course, whether or not these changes will actually take place is one story. Whether or not they'll be effective is another thing. Whether or not they'll end up being good for the sport is really, you can't even blame the Alphabet Boys for that. At the end of the day, you have to try things. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Good intentioned or not, that's just the way that is going to work. That being said, the changes are, at the very least, I'll give them credit. That's going to be a rarity from me, but I'll give them credit. The changes are, at the very least, interesting. The changes that seem to kind of get to me, or that sort of interested me, were three. There were three. The first one, of course, would be half points. Now, this is something that a lot of hardcore boxing fans in particular have talked about for a while. This is the idea that in close rounds where the action was fairly even, back and forth, but there was a person that seemed to do a bit more in the round. Maybe he seemed to finish the round a bit stronger, or maybe maybe both fighters were stunned, but one seemed to stun the other a bit more, something like that. You could have rounds that were considered 10 to 9.5, for example. Or, for example, if a fighter was knocked down, it would normally, traditionally, be a 10-8 round. However, if the fighter that was knocked down otherwise won the round, but it wasn't so dominant that he had to have completely leveled out the round and made it a 9-9 or a 10-10, however you want to rule it, he could have made it a 10-8.5 round. And of course, this would allow for a bit of the bridging of the gap in a round that was a bit more even than 10-8 would appear when, in reality, the guy was knocked down. Now, of course, this could be quite convoluted, and there would have to be clear restrictions on when this could take place, because at the end of the day, boxing scorecards can already be a little bit crazy and all over the board, as we have seen time and time again. But that being said, it was at the very least an interesting concept, and of course with the internet and social media, there's a lot of complaining about scoring, potentially, if done correctly. And again, I'm not saying that I know the exact way to do this, but potentially this could have some very interesting, this could potentially be a bit of help. I think the way that it would best serve boxing to have any sort of half points, if that's something that you should even do in the first place, which I'm not totally sold on. But if there was a way in which it could help, it would be this way. If you have a fight, a round, more accurately, where you felt as though maybe a fighter was knocked down, but it was a flash knockdown, or maybe you feel as a judge that fighter might have been tripped up a bit, but it was ruled a knockdown, so on and so forth, you could still give the referee and the fighter that scored the alleged knockdown the benefit of the doubt by making it a 10-8. But as long as the round was either competitive or the fighter that was downed perhaps even pulled away a bit in that round, you could make it a 10 to an 8.5 round. That makes sense to me. But if you start making it just more convoluted for the sake of trying to clean it up, the fact of the matter is that's really not the issue. The issue really is that a lot of scorecards come back absolutely abysmal. I mean, they're just terrible cards. You look at Arthur Abraham versus Paul Smith. Whoever you thought won that fight is inconsequential to the fact that one judge gave Paul Smith one single solitary round. You could make half points, you could make 3/4 points. It doesn't matter in that case. The fact of the matter is one judge didn't watch the fight. And if he did, he scored that fight despite the fact that he won that he actually saw the fight. So in the end, it's really more about the ineptitude of certain officials, and in this case judges, and their inability or their lack of a desire to score the fight effectively. That really should be addressed more than half-point systems, but again, I can see how it might work to a certain extent. The second thing, of course, that sort of caught my attention in terms of what they wanted to do, which I'm in favor of, is the 30-day and the 7-day weigh-ins. There are a couple of ABC boys that do this already, where they make sure the fighters are under a certain weight 30 days out and 7 days out from a fight. So if a fight's at 147 pounds, of course, you can't be any heavier than, X, Y, and Z, and then you can't be any heavier than X, Y, and Z 7 days prior to the fight as well. This way, less people are trying to cheat the system. I'm okay with that. That's good. You know, this potentially eliminates the chance of fighters like Chavez, who's damn near a cruiserweight, fighting at middleweight all that long, because it's a little impossible to cheat the system. As you get a bit older, your body gets a bit thicker and a bit broader. You'll eventually get caught by employing these sort of benchmark days where you have to sort of meet a weight. You don't just have to, for a 24-hour weight day, 24-hour period, I should say, just be a certain weight at some point during that day, get it, and then just pig out if that's what you decided to do, and you don't have to drain yourself, because at the end of the day, you'd have to be draining yourself for an entire month, and then it would be found out in the ring that you probably are not the fighter you once were, based solely upon your physical presence at that point. So I'm in favor of that one, and I hope that all the sanctioning bodies decide to adopt such a tactic, because I believe it's for the benefit of the sport. The most interesting one, of course, from a purist like myself standpoint, I suppose, would be the unification discussions that were started. Of course, in a newsletter given out by the WBC, there was this notion that the sanctioning bodies over the next few years are interested and will seek to unify the division so there is one champion per division. Crazy thought. But that is apparently the concept. There will be tournaments held with champions and titleists and what have you, and then, of course, there would be one true, genuine world champion when it was all said and done. This is cool for a lot of reasons, if this were to occur, of course, because it might bring fighters out of their comfort zones, having to fight away from home, or having to fight harder fights, or tougher fights, or more challenging fights, even at home for that matter. The problem, of course, is always going to be, when I look at, say, for example, the WBC. When I look at the WBC, I don't think they have a great idea. I can't wait to see it come into play. I always think, wow, they have a great idea. How will they find a way to ruin this? And that is, sad to say, just the fact of the matter. It's the way I think about when I think about them. Now, one might be able to say that that's a bit unfair, it's a bit harsh, or you could even make an argument that it's unwarranted, but I truly believe it is quite warranted, because that's what they've shown you throughout history. They are good at taking a decent idea, a decent idea, and convoluting the hell out of it to the point where it's a poor, terrible idea. Still, of course, maybe fingers crossed something comes out all right in the end. Maybe they get it right this time. And I would love to see it, of course. I'm sure plenty of other fans would love to see unifications. I'm sure, maybe not the half-point system again, but I'm sure fans would like to see a bit more of an onus on proper scoring and proper officials, of course. And the 30-day weigh-in, of course, would allow for fighters to fight at their more natural weight. And, of course, any chance you get to stop people from cheating the system when it benefits you as a viewer, of course, I'm sure you guys would be more than interested in that. So, of course, I want to hear your opinions on this. What changes would you make? Better question here. First of all, of course, what do you think of their potential changes, things they might want to do, the ones I mentioned in particular, of course, but also, what changes would you make to the sport if you were in a position to make such changes? Of course, you can leave it in the comments, and of course, you can hit me up on Twitter at 12RounderBoxing. Be sure to visit 12rounder.com. Like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. And of course, if you're looking for the upcoming schedule for this weekend, you can click the link below. It'll be in the descriptions. And again, love to hear from you guys. So until next time, enjoy the fights.